Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men. Power Black men. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where my intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models in mainstream media. So my intention is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. And tonight, I'm going to do things just a little different. I recently met this brother named Naji Okan, and we immediately hit it off. And when we met, I told him I'd like to do an unscripted conversation between two Black men from different generations. So tonight he and I are going to have a dialogue about a wide variety of topics, and he'll have an opportunity to ask me any questions about anything, and I'll do the same. So it's going to be a free-for-all conversation between two brothers about who knows what. I don't know. So with that being said, let me welcome Naji to the show. Hello, Naji. How are you?
Hello, brother. Good. How are you, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Now, it's been a couple of months since we met. And at the beginning, the very first conversation I said, hey, man, look, I want to do a free-for-all conversation just between two brothers. And you go, man, let's do it. So Here we are. Now, I want to begin by doing an MKP type check-in, and we're going to explain what that is to the audience in just a moment. So why don't you begin with checking in with your name, where you're from, how you feeling?
Got you. All right. Naji Okan checking in from Covington, Georgia. I'm feeling grounded in the present moment. Joyful. Inspired by a conversation I had earlier and by this present moment. It's like I'm in a good place, connected with good people, so feeling good.
Nice. So I'm going to check in with Michael Happy Ass Taylor, checking in from Houston, Texas. And I'm feeling really optimistic. My friends gave me a nickname and they call me Happy Ass Taylor because of my optimism. And one of the reasons that I'm really optimistic is because I get to interview brothers like yourself on this show, and I get to see and talk to some amazing brothers that unfortunately we don't see in mainstream media. So right now I'm filled with a lot of optimism, a lot of gratitude for meeting you and being connected with you and for this conversation. So with that, I am in. So for those of you who are watching, what we've just done is called a check-in. And I think one of the challenges that we, especially as Black men, have is really being in touch with and being able to express how we feel. And actually, it's not just Black men, that's just men in general, because we live in a culture that has conditioned men to believe that men aren't supposed to feel. We're taught that feelings are for women. And so what we as men do sometimes is we suppress, repress, and deny how we feel. And I believe that that's what causes a lot of the pain and suffering in our lives. So Naji and I are both graduates of a program called the New Warrior Training Adventure. And what that is it's a 3-day weekend that really helps men redefine masculinity in a way. It allows us to really challenge our beliefs and assumptions about what it means to be a man. It helps us recognize how cultural conditioning works and how we sometimes accept beliefs without even knowing that we're accepting them. So it's really an opportunity about redefining manhood. And so this past May, Naji and I were in the MKP weekend, and it was a unique weekend because it was the first time that this organization that had done a specific weekend for Black men and men of color. And so it was amazing to say the least. And I've been doing this work for more than 25 years, and I've been involved with MKP since 2002. And again, this was the first time that we had a specific weekend for Black men and men of color. So now, my first question though is, what was that experience? No. Let's back up. How did you get involved with MKP? Let's start there.
Okay, so 2016, right? 2015. My son was born in February 2015, and basically it started with me wanting to be a better man for my son. And I was at work, working nights at the time, and I just realized I don't know how to do this, you know. Me and my ex-wife at the time, she wanted more from me, you know, and I didn't know how to give that either, you know. So it was like there's something missing here. So I was looking for a men's organization, preferably like a mentor group. That's what I was looking for. And so I went online, did a search for men's mentor groups, and the first thing at the top of the page was New Warrior Training Adventure, you know. And I always consider myself a warrior for some reason, you know, even before I knew what the term really meant, or what they meant by it. So the warrior part, I thought, oh man, like I get to go out here and do some drills and, like, you know, swing for some trees, shoot some guns. I didn't know what was going to happen, you know. But I like the fact that it said New Warrior Training Adventure. So I looked at it and read what the description of it was, and it resonated. So I dialed the number, and the first person that answered, I don't even know if it still works like this, but you could dial a number at the time, I guess, and it goes to someone, and it went to Boysen Hodgson, and we had a great conversation. And for those who don't know, Boysen Hodgson he's like the marketing director or something like that for MKP. Like, he does a lot of the marketing and helps with that. So to talk to the guy that's behind it was interesting. I didn't know that at the time, but his story really resonated with me, and you know, I liked how it sounded. So I was like, sign me up, you know, and that was the rest is history. And I went within, I think I talked to him one day, and less than a month later, I was on the weekend.
Wow. That's unbelievable, actually, because most people that get to New Warrior, they're kicking and screaming because either their wife is threatening divorce or something's really going on in their life. They're trying to figure it out, and they just sort of, it's a last attempt to put their lives together in some cases. And here you are, had the insight and awareness to say, you know what, I want to be a better man. And that's really powerful. To be able to have that sense of awareness that you go, you know, I can't do this by myself. I need some support. I need to work with somebody, some group, something, so that I can be a better father. I can be a better man. So again, that speaks volumes about who you are as a man. You know, it's interesting when we talk about how we get involved with MKP, because everybody's got their own story. But for me, I was sitting up one Sunday, flipping through the channels, and I came across this documentary kind of film, and they were interviewing these 5 white guys who were kind of out in the woods playing drums. And for some reason, it intrigued me. So I started listening. I just kind of stopped and listened. Well, one of the guys started talking about going through a divorce. Now, I had gone through a divorce myself. And so as I listened to him, I really resonated with what he was saying about, you know, how he was emotionally disconnected and how his wife, you know, had just sort of abandon him emotionally because he didn't know how to connect with her emotionally. And I was just really intrigued by the conversation. Now, the guys in the show were all old white guys with gray hair, but what they were saying really resonated with me. And so I thought, what is this thing? And so after it was over, it said, Mankind Project or whatever. And I just thought, what, that was interesting. Well, after watching the show, I went to the grocery store to go buy some groceries. And when I went to pull the basket out to get my groceries, there was a flyer for MKP in the basket.
Well, well.
Now, I had been involved with New Age thinking, right? So I was like, ooh, the universe is telling me something. I said, this is no accident. And as a result of that, I just signed up for the training.
Wow.
And I had been doing this work for a long time. So it wasn't like I was in a lot of pain, or I just knew that I just needed to be there. And it was really transformative. I really got a lot out of it. And probably the most significant thing that I got out of the weekend was, I didn't realize it, but I learned through the training that I actually didn't trust men. I had some issues with truly trusting men. Now, I had been a guy that had facilitated workshops with men, and I'd done a lot of work around men per se, but not specifically dealing with masculinity. But it wasn't until I did that training that I became comfortable experiencing true intimacy with men. And it was transformative. And like I said, I didn't recognize that about myself. And so by going through this weekend, it really opened my eyes to male conditioning and how society conditions us to act certain ways. And so again, it's been transformative. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, what was your big takeaway from the weekend?
My big takeaway. Big takeaway was, and that's one of them, slowing down, taking a breath. But the biggest one was that I could live a life of integrity. And that could open doors for me I never imagined. That was the biggest one, because I had never heard integrity talked about so heavily in a space with other men, and other men hold each other accountable, So yeah, that was a big one. And also the question I left with was, how can I live life more authentically? So authenticity and integrity is something that definitely was what I picked up on, because it was talked about quite a bit in the weekend. And I realized that, there's even a deeper level than that too. That despite the differences I think I have with between me and other men, that we basically have similar experiences with in life, and that kind of leveled the playing field for me, because for a while I battled with feelings of inadequacy and things like that. So to hear other men's stories and realize that we all are similar in so many ways, no matter where we're from or what we've been through, that we all have this experience called life as human beings, man.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah. Interesting to see.
Now, as mentioned, MKP as an organization, it's been around for a very long time. I don't remember the exact time frame, but 30, 40 years or so. And it's primarily been mostly white men. So I'm curious, when you did your training, were there other men of color in the group with you when you went to your training?
There were. Yeah, it was, when I tell people that, it's like, wow, really? Yeah, it was let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 of the men of color on the weekend.
Nice. Because when I did my training, no other Black people in the room at all. No staff, no participants. I was the only brother in the room. And it wasn't an issue for me, but it is something that I'm glad to see more Black men engaged in this work. Because
Sure.
again, it is so transformative and it does allow us to move past this whole identity of color and race and get to our authentic selves, as you mentioned earlier. I think that should be the goal as
Yeah.
human beings, and especially as men of color. And so that's why I think it's important for us to have this conversation. And that's why I started the Shatter the Stereotypes movement, is to provide brothers with an opportunity to possibly get a different perspective. Because again, in this work, so many times I'd be the only brother in the room doing these workshops and book signings and stuff like that, reading books primarily by white guys and stuff like that. So I said, I know there's got to be other brothers out there who are open to doing this kind of work. And so when you and I met, for me, it was an immediate connection.
Mm.
Number one, the fact that you were so open-minded to do this kind of work. And then when we actually met, I was like, okay, see this brother, that's my brother. No, it was just too perfect. So
So,
with that
brother,
being said, I want to set the context for our conversation. I'm going to play a little video, and after the video, we'll have a conversation. Let me pull this out real quick. I had heard a lot about the roller coaster. Initially, I didn't want to go and see it, but everyone kept saying, you have to check it out and get on it. It will be so much fun. Reluctantly, I went to see it. It was intriguing and enticing, and it looked like fun. You have to get on it, everyone said. I'm not sure that I want to. But everyone loves getting on a roller coaster, they said. I don't think I'll like it. Go ahead and try it. You'll like it, everyone said. So I tried it. In the beginning, it was fun. Going round and up and down with friends who also seemed to be having fun was initially enjoyable. But after a short while, I got bored and tired. I didn't want to ride it anymore. I decided that I wanted to get off. You can't get off, everyone said. But I'm ready to. No one gets off the roller coaster once they get on. Why not? They just don't. But I'm ready to get off. Why not ride it a little longer and see if you'll change your mind, they said. Okay, I'll try it a little longer. Round and round, up and down, I went pretending that I was enjoying myself. But after a while, I began to get angry. I was tired of the roller coaster, and I realized that I shouldn't have gotten on it in the first place. I wanted to get off, but I didn't know how. I'm really sick of this roller coaster. I want to get off right now. "Oh, we're sorry, but you must stay on the roller coaster. That's the rule." Well, I guess I'm going to have to break the rule because I'm about to get off. But if you break the rule, no one will like you, and you will probably get hurt, they said. I don't care about anyone else. I want to get off now. Who can I talk to about getting off this thing? No one knows how to get off, they said. I'm sure someone knows. I just have to find them. It's been said that only a few people have ever gotten off this roller coaster, and no one really knows what happened to them. Some believe that people have been killed trying to get off. Why take that risk? At this point, I'm willing to take that risk. I don't care what other people think or what people are going to say. I refuse to keep going around and getting nowhere on this thing, and I must do something to get off. I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I couldn't stay on the roller coaster. I needed a plan, and I needed it soon. I felt like I was dying and wanted to live again. But what about the risk? What if what they say is true? What if I really can't get off or get killed trying to get off? At this point, I decide that I only have one choice, and that choice is to live. I don't know what will happen, but I know if I stay on this thing, I'm already dead. I have to trust my inner instincts, take the chance, and simply jump off. I'm not sure where I'll land or if I'll get hurt or even die, but I just know that I have to jump. So despite what everyone else was saying and the fear and uncertainty I felt,
I took a deep breath and jumped. As my body was hurled through the air uncontrollably, surprisingly, I felt a deep sense of calm and inner peace. And then I did exactly what I intuitively knew I could do. I flew.
The roller coaster is simply a metaphor for society. If you truly want to be happy, you must be willing to jump off and find your joy. First of all, what do you think? What do you thought? What were your thoughts about that?
I was really curious to know where the roller coaster story, like where it was going to go. But when you said it, just when you said when I jumped and I felt like it was uncontrollable, then I remembered. Basically, I heard you remembered how to fly, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, the memory of who I truly am is the journey, you know.
That's it. That summarizes what the whole video is about. We get so caught up into what society says we're supposed to do, and we're stuck on this roller coaster. We're completely unaware that we're on it. For example, I was on that roller coaster at the age of 23. I had the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids, and all that. And by society standards, I was successful, right?
Mm.
And within about a 6.5 year time frame, that dream turned into a nightmare. Divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure, homelessness. But it wasn't until I gained the courage to jump off of that roller coaster and to begin my inner journey of transformation that my life changed. And so that jump, that leap of faith is where it begins. And especially as men of color, I think it's important for us to come to the understanding that we each have to find our own path. No one can walk your path except you. And sometimes the universe has to take drastic measures to get your attention. And we go through adversity, but it's really the universe's way of saying, look, you're just not going in the right direction. I'm just trying to redirect you to where you can find your authentic self. And that to me is how I look at adversity now. I now believe that every adversity brings us a gift and a lesson if we're willing to look deeply enough into it. As a matter of fact, I even wrote a book called Adversity is Your Greatest Ally. And I kind of chronicle my journey from homelessness to now living my version of an extraordinary life. And so with all that being said, I just want to kind of just jump into it now, this conversation. And I'd really like to start with your perspective as a man of color, Black man, whatever label you want to wear, which I don't think you like labels anyway, but I just want to get your perspective because again, in our media, we are so inundated with negative stories around Black men. I can understand how some Black men feel powerless. You know, it's like, what can I do? Because society's doing whatever it does to me. So just from your perspective, what's it like as a man of color? For you, obviously.
That is a good question. Good question. So, what's it like? There's so many layers to it. Let me see if I can get down to. I can address the layers, but not. I won't make too much story out of it. So, on the first, let's say on the first layer, which would be when I go out into the world and I'm navigating it, right? And I'm out in a society. I want to just speak from my experience. I'm out in a society that wasn't necessarily built by me or by people that look like me. But I am in it, right? So there's times when I feel like I have limited experience that was shared with me as a Black man. And so I've got to figure this thing out, you know, and in a society that there's a lot of times where I feel like I'm not made for the society, like it wasn't structured for me as a Black man. Uh, and so I often find myself thinking of ways to work. When I find out something new about how society works, I find myself finding ways to work it, you know, and sometimes it feels like I got to do it in a way that I don't get hurt, or, like someone doesn't stop me before I get where I'm trying to go. Uh, because the story I've told myself in the past is that our greatest Black leaders get killed, right?
Mm.
And so I feel this journey towards something, and it always feels like it has a weight to it, an importance to it. And I'm in this society that I feel doesn't want me to get there, you know? And so when I find myself winning in it, then I really feel empowered, you know? I really feel like, oh, I'm figuring this out, you know, because there's no playbook that was necessarily given to me, handed down from generation to generation, like some of our European descended brothers and sisters, and how they've been building this country for the last 400 or 500 years, and they, seems that they passed this thing down to each other, and so I didn't have that same experience, and so yeah, there's so many layers to it, but that's I guess that's in a nutshell where it's at. And then there's another layer too for me, being deeply involved in the spiritual community, where I find myself being seen in a subculture, a sub society, if you will, in a bigger society that doesn't quite understand this sub society yet. And so in that way, that's why I feel the most connected to the truth of who I am, because it's bigger than, if even though it's a subculture inside society, it's bigger than the society. It's a universal society, it's a ethereal society, it's this huge thing that this society is packaged just one experience inside. And so I'll have to remember to not run from the society based upon that experience, because even though I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, I still am here. And so those are two different sides of the spectrum for me, being a Black man, because I could absolutely escape into that and be like, I'm gonna go meditate in the mountain somewhere and run away and never come out again, or different ways that I tend to try to escape from the truth of what it is. And I definitely feel like I have got to work very, very hard to get to where I'm trying to go, to just figure out how to thrive in a society that doesn't always feel like it supports me.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Now I'm curious. I'm 62. So I remember the 60s. I remember the civil rights movement and all of that. But I also remember in high school, actually in junior high, high school, whatever, I had a problem fitting in because I was not, how will I say this? I simply thought differently. And so a lot of the things I did weren't considered Black. For example, I love to surf. I'm from Corpus Christi. I love to surf. Had a surfboard in my bedroom. Now, in Corpus Christi, especially back in the 70s, not a lot of Black people there anyway, but you could count on this many fingers how many Black men you see surfing, right? And so I lived in some inner city projects. So all of my friends were Black. And so they'd come over my house and they'd see this surfboard and they go, and they used to call me white boy. because of me being a surfer and because of how I spoke and some of the things that I did. So I'm curious today, is that still a conversation that Black people are having in your age group where if you do something that quote unquote isn't Black enough, you're accused of being a sellout? Is that still a thing?
I want to say not as much.
Okay.
Uh, it was though, even when I was in school, but I do feel like the younger generation, the newer generations,
Yeah.
they're not as stuck on that. They're more accepting. I think there's more crossover with social media and things like that, to where, you know, more. It is not the same race dynamics, just that are separate. We're crossing over and doing things that each other doing because it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think it's less. But when I was in school, it was the same thing. I'm
Yeah.
34, and
Yeah.
so and I'm still into cars and racing, and you know, that was like the dangerous thing. Like, Black guys don't do that.
Yeah. Right.
Why you want to kill yourself? Like it's white boy, it's a white boy shit. But no, it's not like that as much now. I
Yeah.
noticed. It's still, but of course, it's still gonna be some circles that are like that, right? That's how it is.
Sure. Well, again, in 95, when I wrote my very first book, it was titled Brothers Are You Listening? A Success Guide for the 90s, right? Targeted specifically to Black men. The title of the first chapter was the "That's What White People Do" mentality.
Mm,
And in that chapter, basically what I was doing, I was challenging Black people to ask themselves, are you afraid to do certain things because you're afraid of being accused of being white?
mm-hmm,
And I listed a lot of things that I had been accused of being white because I simply chose to do them. For example, date a white girl. so so
mm-hmm,
it was
mm,
just a really, it was just a way to challenge us to look at, because I know, and again, I agree with you. I think as time progresses, I think we're evolving in consciousness, and that's a whole different conversation. But I think we're evolving and waking up, and I think Black people generally now, especially the younger generation, are just more open-minded
mm-hmm.
and exposed to more. And I don't think that whole idea of sellout, I don't really hear that word that
Mm-mm.
often anymore. But I remember back in the 70s and 80s, that was big. It's like, God, I heard it all the time, all the time.
Mm,
So let's shift gears a little. As Black men, there's tons and tons of stereotypes out there about us. And one of those stereotypes is the fact that, or what society says, the narrative is Black men are deadbeat dads.
mm.
And so you in a lot of ways have already shattered that stereotype by saying you wanted to become a better father.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why you chose to do the Warrior program. So talk to us just a little bit about being a dad. What's that mean to you?
Oh man. See the smiles coming in, man. Yeah. So I had my experience, was similar to I want to back up and just say I didn't have my father, right? So there is I feel like the stereotype was built upon so many things that people don't remember, unseen, with the whole welfare thing, and like, you know, Black families getting money because if the father didn't live there and stuff like that, right? And that how that was built into our culture, and people didn't realize that was happening. Okay, so I'm very aware of that being something that became this generational thing that happened, and then crack in the hood and all that stuff, right? And then as I was growing up and I had my father's stuff, I realized that it was I took it on that it was up to me to change that, to break that pattern, because my father's father was that guy in the street, and he was that guy after him, and so now what do I decide to do? How do I want to do this now? And for me, being a father's, I have the duty part of it, that it is something that was bestowed upon me by all that is, God, creator, you know, to show up in a way that supports another human life, you know, and the journey that that human life has in whatever way I'm put here to do. And so for me, it is a journey into learning, a journey into teaching, and a development of a bond, a friendship, a a mentorship, if you will, you know, of like how to do this life thing to another being that shares a similar um, gender perspective, if you will, you know, and it feels like something that is more than just a title. It's more like a endowment, you know. It's like, and so yeah, it's very important to me to show up to my son in a way that he'll remember in a positive way and be able to take some lessons I learned easier than how I had how to learn them. So that's how I see it. It's a joy.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like yourself, me and my dad, no connection, no relationship whatsoever. My dad passed away a while back, but I can't remember where I read this, but they said that when you come from homes without a present father or no connection to your father, 80% of the people end up being just like their father.
Mm-hmm.
20% do the complete opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Become great fathers. I consciously chose that route.
Mm-hmm.
I remember specifically when I was about 10, and my dad had spanked me for something. I don't remember what it was, but I remember because we had this house that set up on cinder blocks, and I could crawl under the house underneath the front steps, and I used to play with my little Hot Wheel cars in the dirt. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting under these stairs playing with my Hot Wheel cars, and I'm crying because my dad had whooped me for nothing, for something I really hadn't done. But I remember this thought as though it were yesterday. In my mind, I said to myself, when I grow up, I'm not going to treat my kids like my dad treats me.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 8 or 10 years old. I'll never forget. I remember sitting under those stairs crying and having that thought. When I have kids, I'm not going to treat my kids the way my dad treats me. And it stuck. And when I had kids, I read books. I went to seminars. I said, whatever it takes, I'm going to do this daddy thing. I'm going to do it right. And interestingly enough, I used Cliff Huxtable from the Cosby Show as my role model. I wanted
Yeah.
to, I wanted to be just like Cliff Huxtable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied that show. I
Mm-hmm.
studied that character. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to be just like that. I want to have that type of communication. And now, like I said, my daughter's 36. Actually, my daughter will turn 37 tomorrow. I have a son that's 39 and a son that's 42. And I can say without question, I've been an awesome dad because I love being a dad. I absolutely love being a dad. And if I don't do anything else right in this world, I did that right.
Mm-hmm.
Having that relationship with my kids. And with that being said, another stereotype obviously is Black men in relationships.
Yeah.
And you know, they can be challenging, but I think all relationships can be opportunities for us to grow. And you mentioned X. So right now, I'm curious, what's that status and how's that working out in terms of relationships?
Oh wow. Okay. Oh man, some more smiles, man. Yes. So yeah, I'm currently in a happy, healthy relationship um with my partner Dree of a year and going on year and a half. And yeah, all the lessons that I've taken from many failures after my first marriage and uh, you know, different seminars and books and, you know, trainings and everything to be a better partner, right? Because that was actually something that was very important to me too, is to be a good partner too. And I'm not really sure what drove that bus just yet. There's still some work there, but uh, yeah, conversation. Oh, you know what? I do know what drove that bus. So it just hit me because I never even asked myself, why you been on this path for all this time, like trying to develop this good partnership, you know, inside myself, so I could show up in a good way. And Marshall Rosenberg, the nonviolent communication, because in my judgment, my marriage was there was lots of violent communication in there, you know, and I didn't know how to communicate clearly. So or communicate what's happening for me and then hear her and then, you know, repeat back what was happening so I could understand and all that. And so communication is wanting to be a better communicator. I realized it was important. And so yeah, my current relationship, we communicate clearly. We have conversations uh that are deeper, that are vulnerable, that are expressive and patient, you know, and kind, you know, all these things. And there's times when we both express things that we don't like. We both hear those things and then ask, is this what you're really saying? And so she's also into mental health and her
Nice.
work and things like that. So it works out. And so I've learned over the years that, you know, when they talk about evenly yoked, right? You know, what's so funny about evenly yoked? I used to think that it was like egg yolk at first, right? Like when I was young, like I used to think like egg yolks because I didn't know what it was. And then it's probably like 2 years ago, a friend of mine was explaining to me like what the yoke was about. And I don't know how many people know this, but like when it in the Bible, when it says that, you know, partners should be evenly yoked, you know, two mates should be evenly yoked, it's talking about how bulls would pull a carriage or horses or what have you. And the thing that goes over their neck that they pull the carriage with is called a yoke.
Right.
It's basically like both people pulling their weight in
Yeah.
their relationship, right? And so when I was raised, when I thought the yoke was having the same religious tradition.
Correct.
That's a long story,
Yeah.
long story, because
Right.
that's my religious programming, right? That I had to decide to not let run my life. But when I realized it was carried the same way, I said, "Oh, I just need to learn how to pull my weight and find someone that will pull theirs too." You
Yeah.
know, and the thing about a bull that I always appreciated was they say like the difference in weight that two pull, like, so when one bull pulls weight, it's like however many thousands of pounds, but like when two pull it, it's triple that,
Mm.
not double. And it's like an important thing, right? And so I always have that in my mind, like my partner needs to have a similar ability, and this guy says a little want to pull the weight, you know. And that's, for me, it's more the inner weight, you know, not so much. I mean, you have all the worldly stuff too, the stuff that you need to have down or at least work towards, but the inner stuff is like, can't trade it. I'm happy, man. I'm in a good place.
There you go. Yeah. And again, if you look culturally, and I'm not talking race, but just masculine, from a masculine perspective, we live in a culture that, in my judgment, as men, men were conditioned to believe they had three responsibilities, what I call the three P's: procreate, provide, and protect.
Mm-hmm.
So we were taught that those were the three most important things for a man to do. But what society failed to do, they taught us how to provide and protect, but it didn't teach us how to connect. And what we long for is connection.
For sure.
And if you look at mainstream media primarily, and again, I'm going to talk specifically about the brothers, and we look at rap music as an example, and I'm not attacking rap music by any stretch of the imagination, but if you look at how relationships are viewed within those contexts, how they treat women, it speaks volumes to how a lot of our young men treat women.
Mhm.
And so as Black men, it's incumbent upon us to change our narratives about relationships and understand the importance of connection, and to not be afraid, not ashamed to say, I love my wife. I've been happily married for 22 and a half years, 23 years now. And I just adore my wife. I love being married. I absolutely love being married. Now, it's taken some effort to get to this point. Again, going through a divorce, knowing when relationships aren't working and how to identify when they weren't working, and then ultimately finding my partner. I wouldn't trade my wife for all the tea in China.
Amen, brother. Amen.
So again, I think especially as Black men, we have to get comfortable sharing with each other, man. Like I said, I just love being married. That's just me. Now, it's not for everybody, obviously, but here's how I came to decide that I wanted to be married. And actually, I wasn't really that concerned with being married as much as I was about finding the right person to share life with. So it's really about partnership. It's not necessarily about the marriage. So here's the thing. So back in the 90s, when I was becoming a speaker, and I was into the new age movement and everything. And so I had my vision board, right? You know what a vision board is.
Oh yeah.
And on my vision board, I had a picture of the United States. And I had a little picture of a woman on the East Coast, and I had a picture of a woman on the West Coast. And I also had a picture of a woman in Europe. And so my vision board was I was going to have a girlfriend on the East Coast, a girlfriend on the West Coast, a girlfriend in Europe. I mean, I literally had pictures of women on my vision board of what I wanted, right?
Yeah.
So I'm finally putting my life back together after my divorce and all of that. And so that was where I was at the time. And then I gave my first full 45-minute speech with no notes. Okay. And I killed it. I mean, I killed it. I was just like, boom, I got standing ovations, and I'm just like, yeah. So I'm sticking my chest out, I'm the man. So all these people at this event, they're, hey, Michael, blah, 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 blah. So, but after that, I go home, and I was single at the time. And I get home, and I sat there and I started thinking about all the admiration that people had for me and all that. And yet I was alone. And in that moment, I allowed myself to feel that aloneness, that loneliness. And as I sat there, I realized that, wow, this is actually pretty painful. And I never really allowed myself to feel that sadness. And so I just sat there and I just cried. I was like, damn, I got this all wrong. What I really want is somebody to be here with me as I'm doing all this stuff, right? The speaking and the writing and all of that. And so it was in that moment that I decided, I said, you know what? I have a new goal, a new intention. I want to find my soulmate. And I wrote, ooh, wait a minute, I got to read this. You'll appreciate this. This is some good stuff. So again, I simply decided that I wanted to find my soulmate. So what I did was, let's see, where is it here? So I even wrote it down. So I wrote this vision May 5th, 1993. 1993. I married my soulmate April 9th, 2002. And so I want to read though what I wrote.
Okay.
And I wrote this after I was crying about being lonely.
Okay.
So here's what I wrote. My soulmate will be intelligent, physically fit, spiritual, and complete within herself. She will be able to receive all the love I have to give and also able to give her love freely. She will be confident and centered and able to allow me the freedom to be who I am, and I will do the same. My soulmate will be emotionally honest and trustworthy and willing to become one with a spiritual equal. Together, we will grow and expand and support each other in becoming all we were created to be. She will have a great sense of humor, and we will spend hours just laughing and giggling and being silly. We will take life sincerely, but not seriously. She will love children and accept my children as her own. We will vow to make our relationship a commitment to God and therefore create a bond that can never be broken. Every day will be an acknowledgement of how fortunate we are to have each other, and we will be committed to growing our relationship through eternity. We will experience lovemaking at the deepest, most intimate level possible, and each encounter will be an expression of our deep love for one another. We will travel the world together and experience all the wonders of God's great creation called Earth. It will be the joining of two complete souls coming together to unite in the love of God.
Mm.
And when I wrote that, I became obsessed with finding my soulmate. But I knew that I had to get rid of all my emotional baggage first.
Mm.
So between the time that I wrote that and the time that I found her, I had done a lot of work on myself. Healed all my traumas and stuff, and I was just like ready and open. And when I found her, I knew probably a month after we started dating, I said, this is the woman I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with. I knew after about a month. Because when we first met, and I love sharing this story. When we first met, and on our very first date, I took her to Pizza Hut. Now, when I tell people that, I don't know why, especially women, they make a big deal out of it. Like, I wouldn't date no man that take me to Pizza Hut on my first date. But I don't see the issue. I personally would never take a woman to an expensive restaurant on a first date. That's just me. I just wouldn't do that. So we go to Pizza Hut, and I had a list of my 5 non-negotiables. And on our very first date, I shared those 5 negotiables because I wanted her to know where I stood up front, right? One of the non-negotiables was, number one, I wouldn't date somebody who smoked. Just a non-negotiable for me. I just wouldn't date a woman who smoked. Number 2, I told her, look, I got 3 kids. I don't want any more kids. If you want to have kids, I'm not your guy. You need to know that up front. So I just kind of laid it out. This is where I am. And you get to decide whether or not it works for you, right? And so my wife, with her crazy self, she said, okay, I think we'll just be friends. Because she said I had too many rules. But after spending a couple of weeks with her, I knew she was the one. I just knew. And here we are 24 years later, still blissfully happy. So I love it.
I have a question for you about that.
Okay.
That's a good one. The non-negotiables part. And thank you for sharing that story, the whole story, because I want to speak to first the letter, not the letter, but the description of your mate, and how special that felt. Like when I say special, I'm just trying to just make it sound simple, but it feels so divine, right? And when I'm feeling into what you're saying, I could say honestly that those are similar things I've always wanted as well, right? And I wonder how many men, if they just spent time with that question, like what they wanted to look like, what they wanted to feel like, how similar it would be to what you said, because it feels like, like the truth of how lots of people want the relationship to be. So I just honor your work and the way that you were able to be honest with yourself in that moment, and the work that you've done on yourself, and the confidence I've heard you speak to multiple times in this one call. So I just want to say that first of all.
Appreciate that. And
Yeah,
again,
man.
it
But
came it came from a place of sadness. So you go ahead and do your question.
okay. um, okay, I don't want to lose the question. The non-negotiables.
Mhm.
So did you stick to all the non-negotiables that you listed? And did any conversation around any of them come up and you had to renegotiate?
So here's my belief. I believe everyone should have 3 to 5 non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a whole laundry list of stuff that'll just keep you from getting connected with somebody. But there are certain things that you should feel so strongly about, you can't compromise. Okay. So for me, my non-negotiables were, as mentioned, I would not date somebody who smoked. Number 2, I would not date a religious fundamentalist. That was a non-negotiable for me. For example, if she'd have been a Jehovah's Witness or something like that, it wouldn't have worked. Number 3, I'm a firm believer in health and fitness. So I would not date someone that was overweight. That was important to me. It doesn't have to have an aerobics body, but health is important to me. So that was non-negotiable. Next, ambition. This is something that we don't talk a lot about. But when I say ambition, it's not about money, but the person needed to have open-mindedness that I could dream and they could dream with me.
Mm.
And so what I meant by that is, for example, my first wife, bless her heart, she would have been happy living in an apartment together. That was her thing. She just wanted to be with me. I respect her for that. But at the same time, I dream really big. So I had to have someone that's at least open-minded to allow me to dream. And so I kind of put that out there that, look, I have big dreams, but I also told her, if you're looking for a guy that's going to shower you with gifts, that's not me. I told her up front. But my other non-negotiable, before I get off track, my other non-negotiable was, and this kind of really caught her off guard, is that she had to be drug and disease free.
Mm.
And that's a sensitive topic to talk about on your very first date. But because it was non-negotiable for me, I said, look, I just want to be upfront. And AIDS was still a big thing, right? A lot of people talking. And so I think I remember saying something to the effect of, and I said this in as playful a way as possible, I'm willing to take an AIDS test. Are you? That was kind of where I went with it.
That's great.
But yeah, but again, it sounds like it was a real heavy conversation, but it really wasn't. But I knew that I couldn't compromise those few things. And so in answer to your question, I didn't compromise any of them.
Okay, good. Just curious.
Yeah. So again, and again, I think that's why it's so important for us to know our values, what really matters to us, because the key to a great relationship is simply shared values.
Mm.
Simple. So here's the thing. When you're dating someone, the first thing you should be asking yourselves, because these are the 4 things, the 4 values that you have to share if you want your relationship to work. You have to have the same values around money, around sex, around religion, and around children.
Sex, religion, money, and children.
Religion, money, and children. Those 4 things. If you share the same values with those, because if you ask most psychologists what people fight about, it's one of those 4 things. It's money, it's sex, it's kids, or it's religion. So people fight over. So when you go into a relationship, number 1, you need to know what your values are around those things. For example, when you start talking about ambition, Like I said, when I met my wife the first time, I told her, look, I have big dreams. I'm not there yet. I'm still driving this old raggedy ass car, working at a hardware store. But I got big dreams, baby. I got big dreams. But she was like, no problem. But my point here is that in understanding what our non-negotiables are, knowing what our values are, when we find a person that matches those things, we've got the foundation for creating a great relationship.
Mm-hmm. Got
So,
it. That's good. Thank you.
yeah. So with that being said, last topic we want to talk about, important topic, spirituality.
Mm.
So I was brought up Baptist. I had a pretty negative experience with religion as a kid. Became an atheist for several years, and then went on to find my truth. And it is the foundation of my life now, my connection to that which is greater than myself, which I choose to call divine intelligence. So I'd like to just get your perspective on spirituality and how and if that's important to you.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge to me. And it's so funny that you mentioned, so background, just quick. You mentioned Jehovah's Witness a minute ago. That's what I was raised in.
Oh, wow.
And it's so funny how things go full circle. I'm not that now. Haven't been for 12, 13 years. I left when I was like 21, somewhere in there. And so I'm 34 now. Negative experiences. Like I just am coming full circle on this within the last weekend, which is amazing that this is even a conversation right now. And spirituality is huge for me. I mean, that laid foundation because spirituality is all that. Anyway, I don't have to go down a rabbit hole of what they believe, but it became a center point of my life, just like spiritual things, right? And so when I got older, I still had, my heart was still turned towards spiritual things. My soul still was seeking the truth of what it is to be human and be spiritual here. And, all these different religions and what they believe. Oh man, it's so much I want to know, because I got out and I said, I want to know what this is really all about. And so that sent me down this journey of just open-mindedness, finding that thing, And so I believe it's without attention being turned to the more spiritual things as a human being, I would feel lost each day. I definitely feel it's important to be connected to, or remember that there is a divine intelligence. There is something that connects all of us, that is unseen, and that it gives some sort of meaning to what we're really here for, And so I went from that to nothing at all. I think they call it agnostic, right? I just went from like nothing for a while, and I did therapy and the Mankind Project and all that, and then I got into meditation because I left my job. I jumped and left my job, and I ended up wanting to. I found out that mindfulness could help me with my job. Like do better on my job, and so I learned how to meditate, and I got into meditation, and that became like my religion, because I felt closer to God when I was doing that. I felt a spiritual connection to things like I had never felt before. Had moments of deep clarity, and awarenesses I never knew I could ever get to. And so meditation became my connection to the divine, And then through meditation I came to Buddhism, And Buddhism was very impactful in my journey to learn that there was another religion that was more devoted than I'd ever seen to a path, um, and that lived in alignment with universal law more than I'd ever seen. And that was like really impactful to me, and just the amount of compassion I experienced in some of those spaces.
Yeah.
And because I had witnessed true compassion, really. I had Mankind Project. There's definitely lots of compassionate, vulnerable moments in there. Like, don't get me wrong, but compassion without any understanding of who the person is was my first time ever like really seeing that clearly. And so that took me to more experiences of meditation, and also some psychedelic experiences, and different retreats that had me in silence for 13 days and that kind of thing. Silence and meditating for 13 days. And then I landed in shamanism. Shamanism found me, and it was really powerful for me because it put me in a space of really the unknown. Because from where I came from, anything else, anything mystical, magical was like demonized, right? Like that's like,
Oh yeah.
you can't do any of that stuff. That's like dangerous. You're gonna get your body's gonna get possessed. You're gonna die, whatever. And so for me to take that path was really powerful too, and it changed my perspective big time, and my connection to the earth, and my open heartedness to all beliefs of all backgrounds, origin, whatever. And then so then I came into Kriya Yoga, and Kriya Yoga was and is still my connection to organized religion. And I didn't realize how it was driving the bus, like the experience with the Jehovah's Witnesses was driving the bus to draw back to something similar, which is so interesting, because I felt like it was different, but it's not that different. It's different only in the sense where it's based upon Hinduism,
Yeah.
and also an openness to this particular Kriya Yoga. I'm talking about not all Kriya Yoga. This particular Kriya Yoga is that way. So full circle, had experience recently. I lost my uncle, ended up at with the Jehovah's Witnesses again, and realized I'm still carrying this experience in my body, right? The anxiety, the judgment, all that. And so I say that to say it taught me that sometimes in order to remember who we truly are, we have to go back to the place that it started, to find where we lost ourselves,
Yeah.
if you will,
Absolutely.
in order to make it clear. And so for me, that was what the call to shamanism was, and to just basic meditation was. And it was different than anything else. It's only organized when I organize it. It's not organized because someone says this is how you do it. It's just connection to all that is earthwise, inner-wise, universal, galactic, all that. Meditation and shamanism is right in that space, and they go hand in hand, and also open us up to all things. Like it's interesting, many ways to get there, but for me, that's what I'm called to, and spirituality is everything to me. So that's my journey.
And this is what I love about being connected to all that is. I choose to call it divine intelligence, but our very first conversation on the phone, I remember saying, "Man, you and I are gonna have a conversation." I just there was just this instant connection. I was like, "Yeah, man, I want you to come on. Let's just talk. Let's just do this thing."
Yeah.
And it's been perfect. It's just been. I love how the universe works, and I'm aware and conscious when the universe sends me signals. And one of the signals was, yeah, let's connect with this brother, because this brother is in alignment with what I'm trying to do in terms of the Shatter the Stereotypes movement, to expose brothers to new ways of seeing themselves.
Mhm.
to expose Black men specifically in being willing to look at things a little differently. It's interesting that you mentioned Buddhism, because when I was an atheist, I saw a interview with a Buddhist monk. And it was after listening to that interview that I had a shift. And I realized, I said, wait a minute, maybe my problem isn't with God. Maybe my problem is with what I was taught about God. So maybe I just need to look somewhere else. And it was Buddhism that gave me my first experience of something spiritual, because I deeply resonated with, number one, what this guy was saying, but also I started reading all these Buddhist texts. And I read a book by Thich Nhat Hanh about living Buddha, living Christ.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait a minute. Jesus and Buddha said the same thing. This is like the same thing.
Right.
And I remember in the Baptist church, if you even thought about another religion, that was called, you were called a sinner. You couldn't even think about Buddhism, or it's like, and meditation. Oh my gosh, that was trafficking with the devil. You couldn't do
Right.
that.
That's right.
You couldn't do that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's amazing how it's come full circle. And for me, again, spirituality is the foundation of my life. It is what drives everything that I do. And as mentioned, I have learned to listen to and trust that divine intelligence when it guides me to certain people and experiences. And I know that, again, we were brought together by divine appointment, and I'm just tickled to death that we connected. And so as we wind down, I now want to kind of just give you an opportunity just for your final thoughts to the audience, whatever's on your heart to share based on this conversation or whatever comes to mind. But now just drop some of that Naji wisdom on
Hmm. 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 Something that's become a big part of my journey that I think, no, I know that brought me a lot of freedom, and I just want to share it here. And that is, and it's a little risque, but it's all good because I think it needs to happen. And that's to learn to embrace death with your whole heart.
Mm.
And it says that in the Tao Te Ching, in a different way, but similar. And the reason why I say that is death is the one way that I've noticed we are snatched out of our remembering who we are.
Mm.
The fear of death, I'll say, and that being used against us, you know, um, to keep us connected to fear and separate us from the love of all that is. And so when I say embrace death with your whole heart, I'm saying that to say that it's not something to fear, because it's the one thing that's going to happen. And when we can fully know that and fully be okay with that, then we can really live. Because there's so many times that people don't do things because they're afraid they're going to die from it.
Right.
And it's more than just physical things. There are things that happen in our bodies sometimes that we feel, and our heart says, oh, if you go that way, you may be kicked out of society, and then you'll be living homeless, and then you may may not be able to get food, and then you may die. Like everything is, a lot of things are connected to the fear of death.
Right.
And so to embrace death with our whole hearts, we may be able to find some freedom to actually live fully. And so something that I do, that I got this from a monk. Once again, with the monks, man, they just, they are definitely messengers along the path. You don't have to be a Buddhist to be touched by Buddhist teachings or a monk, right? And I know it's across other traditions, this has been said too. And there's also a philosopher named Seneca who also has a beautiful book about, it's called How to Die. And it's not about dying, like killing yourself, but it's about how to die well, basically. And anyway, this Buddhist monk, he'd say, today is a good day to die, you know? And several different traditions have a spin on that. You know, we probably hear it some other places, but I wake up usually, like not every day, but I will say that in my heart, like today's a good day to die. And I'm only saying that to remind myself that even if I do go, I lived here. And I always say, if ever I do go, I have even more, because energy is infinite. My energy can then be used on a broader scale, you know, and it can still be a beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be a solemn thing. And so, anyway, that's my short piece, because I think with COVID and all this other stuff happened and people were in fear, and I understand that. But at the same time, let's not let our lives be limited by our fear of something that's guaranteed anyway.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
That's it.
Death is inevitable. It's going to happen. And it's funny because, well, not necessarily funny, but for me, not like I want to die, but I'm really anticipating it because I know there's something on the other side of, I don't know what that might be, but I just know there's something. And I actually look forward to whatever that might be. It's just kind of how I see it. Kind of how I see it. Yes. So as you're watching this, I want you to think about the title of this show, Shatter the Stereotypes. And again, in our current society, when it comes to Black men, there's so many stereotypes about us, and it's easy to buy into the negative narratives, right? But we have an opportunity to shift that narrative, and we have to shift it ourselves. And that's why I do this show. I want to bring men on so we can have these types of conversations that hopefully challenge you to think a little deeper about who you are and the world around you. So once again, the intention is for you to live an extraordinary life, because contrary to what you may see in the media, it is my belief Black men are actually thriving. You just may not see it in mainstream media. So the question becomes, are you willing to thrive? That's the key question. And if you want to thrive, you got to be willing to go deep. And so this conversation, I hope, has given you some insights and challenged you to think for yourself. And Naji, I just want to say I love you, brother. And I'm so glad we're connected. And it's just been my absolute pleasure having you on the show. And this won't be the last time. Definitely won't be the last time.
Thank you, brother. I love you too, brother. Thank you for having me and asking some really great questions, and mirroring some things back to me, and also sharing the vibe that you bring, man, the confidence that you bring, the depth, the clarity that you bring. Every time we talk, I feel inspired and feel energized. So thank you.
Nice. Then my work is done.
That's right.
All right, but this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes. Remember, it is up to you to create an extraordinary life, but to do so, you got to be able to put forth extraordinary effort. All right, we'll see you next episode. Take care.
Peace.